Welcome! Today we are going to show off some melee weapons. I wanted to make a video about the Telos Boltace because it's been coming up in a lot of builds that I've been working on, but I didn't want to do a video just about the Telos Boltace, so we're going to cover some benchmarks for melee weapons, some examples of like archetypes of melee weapons. Not too many, but a few. I'm going to be here testing with my Wukong build, so I will show you that quickly, and then we will get right into the tests. So, again, the purpose of this is kind of to provide like a baseline for different melees, strengths of different kinds of melee weapons. Let me show the Wukong build really quick. It's not very complicated, it's just this is what it is. Don't use Rifle Amp if you're actually going to play this build, just use Steel Charge. This build is just for using Defy. Incidentally, you can also fly for a long time with Cloudwalker. And here's my Galatine Prime build. So this is the first weapon we're going to test. The reason we're testing Galatine Prime first is because this is the most normal melee weapon. It's good with all of the good melee mods. So Pressure Point, Organ Shatter, Body Count, Blood Rush. This is like if you're using a crit weapon, you use these mods. So I wanted a weapon that is like the poster child or one of the poster children for that melee category, and Galatine Prime is a good one. Berserker is pretty common in these builds, and Lifestrike is a pretty common melee mod in general. As I've said quite a few times on my channel already, you don't want to use a full ranked Lifestrike if you're using a weapon that does as much damage as Galatine Prime does per hit, because you're always going to overheal yourself. But if you were using like Venka Prime, which is a weapon we might talk about at some point, you know, sure, use a full ranked one so you full heal with just one channel. And then Fever Strike, Shocking Touch, you know, not like, quote, the best melee mods, but they're just quintessential. I mean, it's damage, corrosive, blah. So, and Heavy Blades are really good. And Galatine Prime does the highest base damage of all of them. So, let's cut some dudes up, and I will talk about what the Galatine Prime is good for. So, you want this weapon, I think you want this weapon. This weapon is strong, let's put it that way. This weapon is strongest when you have a situation where you know that you're going to be able to stack all of the combo counter that it needs. In other words, like if you're going to be able to get there, quote unquote, then this weapon is good. And it's also good if you need the healing. I think that's the very biggest thing. So I personally think that this weapon is favored when you, quote, need the healing, because it is so efficient when you use it with Lifestrike. It's very good at giving you that healing that you need, like really, really quickly. So it's a good weapon for that. It's perhaps one of the best weapons for that. A lot of people tell you that it is the best melee weapon right now, like ubiquitously. There's no debate. I don't think that that's true. I don't think that's not debatable. But I do think that if you're talking about just like normal melee weapons to do normal melee things, like what I'm doing right now, where you just build up your combo counter for like a bit and then start cutting dudes in half, like yeah, I mean sure, it's the room blender. So that's what it does. It just kills people. And as you saw at the beginning there, like you really have some wind up time, but now you can go through heavy gunners like nothing, you know? So there's that. You know, these kinds of weapons usually do, like these are level 80 enemies, like they have a lot of armor. For this test, I chose only Ancients and enemies that have a lot of armor, so they're hard to kill, you know. That being said, you deal with them pretty easily once you get to, you know, we're at a 2.5 times combo counter, and it didn't take a short amount of time to build that up, you know. So that's worth considering. But as you can see, it very easily dealt with those enemies. So now we're going to go into an example of a weapon that does not need that build-up time, but does not have as high damage once it gets there. So, Telos Boltace. This is the weapon that I need to talk about, because it plays very differently than what you just saw. That was like a long wind-up time, and then very high damage payoff once the wind-up was over. This weapon is a little bit different. It has very short wind-up time, and the damage is very high up front, but not insanely high DPS. So if you're just attacking a target and you can stand there and be immortal, this weapon is not quite as good. But let me explain how it works. So, Telos Boltace does a wave of slash damage, guaranteed slash proc damage whenever you have it equipped. Actually, let's show that really quick. So you have to have it as your active weapon. This won't work if you do a spin attack otherwise, but when you do a spin attack, so you do like a wave, that wave. And that wave does a guaranteed slash proc that does pretty good damage, and it's also a slash proc. And the reason that's really important is for Relentless Combination. So this gives you a combo counter tick every time a slash proc inflicted by the melee weapon ticks for damage. So what this means is that when you spin attack with Telos Boltace, every enemy you hit, provided you don't kill them before the slash proc is done ticking, gives you 7 combo counter ticks, because slash procs last 6 seconds. So that's a lot. Like if you slide attack and there are 10 enemies in front of you, you just got 70 combo counter for that one button press. You just press slide attack one time, 70 combo counter, which is completely insane, obviously. The range of that wave is affected by Prime Reach, which is obviously what we're going to want because we can hit as many enemies as possible. And then otherwise we basically have the same thing as that build from before. Pressure Point, Organ Shatter, Body Count, Blood Rush. And then we have a little bit of space for base damage, thank goodness. And of course the elephant in the room is Maiming Strike. This guarantees that we crit with no combo counter when we're on a 0 multiplier, because this weapon has 10% base crit chance. So this 90% crit chance is base, which means when you slide attack you always crit, and it also scales with Blood Rush, which means that you get crazy red crits extremely fast, because you can build up your combo counter really fast, and then you get a ton of crit chance when you slide attack. So again, you might have noticed something here. The caveat is this weapon's normal attacks will be trash. They will be literal hot trash. But as long as you slide attack all the time, it's sweet. But if you're not willing to do that, then this probably isn't the weapon for you. So we're going to glide in the air, slash up all these enemies, put a bunch of slash procs on. Now look at my combo counter. It's just like absolutely rocketing up. We're almost at 3 times. Let's get to 3 times. Then we can start killing things. So see, that died in 1 hit after the slash procs. That died in 1 hit after the slash procs. Not quite 1 hit there. There we go, 1 hit. 3 hits. Okay. So see, it's not doing the kind of crazy damage that Galatine Prime would be if it was red critting and stuff, but you get that damage a lot faster. Like much faster. And that has great value. And the other thing is that you can use this from relative safety. You know, like you don't have to like stand there and fight an enemy. You can just sort of drive by them. Is that everyone? Anyway, you get my point, right? So like if there's an enemy somewhere, you just have to go boom, and like that's all your damage. You don't have to stand there going like da 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 da. Like you get all your damage from just drive-bying people. So that's a reason that this weapon can be stronger potentially. Anyway, there's another thing that you did not see in this build, and that is Lifestrike. The other problem, among many problems with this otherwise amazing weapon, is that the build is extremely tight and it's really hard to get enough base damage in here. I really don't feel like you can cut anything except maybe Primed Reach is just unnecessary, and it would be better to just put on Corrosive. But you need, all these mods are mandatory. So until they do the base damage change thing, where Pressure Point won't be a mod anymore and we have more space, you really don't have enough room in this weapon, and that's the problem, you know? Like this weapon's mechanics are complicated enough that it doesn't have room to do as much damage as other weapons. So now we're getting into the sticks as far as melee weapons go. You know, the Galatine Prime is like the quintessential world destroyer, right? And then we got Telos Boltace, which just has weirder mechanics, sort of like a different build-up time. Prisma Dual Cleavers is unique because it is the only good melee weapon with the only really good melee weapon with a Syndicate mod. So if you want to play with a Syndicate mod, if you want that big radial area control to happen, this is your weapon. This is also a good example of a dual weapon, you know, like a weapon that relies on its higher critical multiplier and usually attacking faster or something, or multi-hits, to do its damage. So again, this weapon is going to play differently than Galatine Prime. You're not getting big damage in single hits, you're getting big damage in a time frame, often bigger damage than Galatine Prime in a time frame, but not in 1 hit. This makes it once again worse with Lifestrike, but often better as long as your target is not going to die in a single hit, because you really do get very good DPS, and these weapons also often have good status chance and like good bleeds. So there's that. So I'm going to test this weapon. This is my build. Again, it's pretty similar to the other ones. Drift and Contact is nice on this weapon because it's got good status chance. and slash and corrosive are good elements, so losing 2 seconds of combo counter duration for 40% status chance is okay for fighting enemies of this level. And this weapon is obviously going to have no problem dealing with this crowd because it just absolutely thrives on getting to slice enemies up multiple times. And my syndicate proc will go off a lot because these enemies are very affinity heavy. Or rather, it would be, you know, we're not going to get syndicate procs going off in the simulacrum, but if we were doing this in an open area, we would be getting a ton. Now what you can see is that if you think back to when I was in this situation with Galatine Prime, right? I wasn't getting my combo up this quickly, and I wasn't able to kill enemies fast as soon as I was just able to kill these. Now, Telos Boltace built up that combo yet faster than these weapons did, but their damage profile was ultimately not as impressive as the craziness that you're now seeing, where I can just like completely mutilate these level 80 heavy gunners in like a couple of seconds. You know, this weapon is doing very well now that it's built its combo counter up, and it did that faster than Galatine Prime. Again, doesn't mean it's worse or better or anything, it's just they're different. And this weapon is very, very good if you are in a situation where you can just attack. I would say of these weapons, ironically, this is probably the one that's best on like actual Wukong. Like if you were using like literally Wukong as the frame you're using these weapons on, because he doesn't really need Lifestrike very much, and he can just stand there and attack and build up his combo counter, and these weapons thrive on that. That's what these weapons want. Galatine Prime is more of a weapon where, like, you know, if you're in a group and things aren't going to bother you, so you have time to build it up, or if the enemies are fairly weak, meaning like you'll just kill them with your upfront damage, or you're playing a frame like Chroma, where you want efficient Lifestrike healing, then it's really, really good. But these weapons are very impressive when it's in like this situation. Incidentally, the reason that I'm not covering Venka Prime directly here is one, because I did a whole video on it with like a weird setup, which you can check out here if you want, and two, because it's the same kind of weapon, right? Like it has high base crit chance and a high base critical multiplier, same category as Prisma Dual Cleavers. High base crit chance, high base critical multiplier. And like fast attack speed, they're usually dual weapons. You get the idea, right? A major use of melee for most people is just as a stick to heal yourself with. So I thought I would quickly include what I would recommend for like a Lifestrike stick melee build, basically if you don't plan to actually attack with your melee weapon. So it's pretty simple, it's just base damage. I would recommend all the elemental mods, Spoiled Strike. I guess if you're going to use your melee weapon for this, you might as well just put on a whole Lifestrike. And then adjust the speed so that you can swing it at a speed that will allow you to actually hit things effectively. You know, make sure it's not too slow. I wouldn't want to take Fury off here and have it be like 0.7, you know, that's not really fast enough to hit things reliably, so Fury. But, you know, put on as much more damage as you want. You know, if you want Jagged Edge, fine. More damage, great. Pretty simple. Thought I'd throw that in here. Lastly, we're going to show something that does not rely on body count and blood rush, and instead has a powerful boon of its own, 100% status chance. The Lacera is a pure elemental damage blade and whip that has the highest status chance of all melee at 45%. So with only 3 dual stat mods, you can get to a tasty 100% status chance, which is pretty impressive. Which means we'll be able to inflict corrosive a lot, we'll be able to CC with blast, we'll do that in a pretty big radius, but we do not have scaling damage. This weapon has terrible crit chance and multiplier, not scaling damage. So this weapon is going to struggle a lot against these level enemies, but it will be able to cut through their armor. So you'll see that after a while of whacking away at them, I'll start to do like kind of decent damage, but it's not going to go very well. I just spoiler alert right now, it's not going to be pretty. And you know, for sure, like if you weren't Wukong, like, and you could just survive forever, like this would be going terribly. Like absolutely terribly. Just terribly. Let's get rid of these ancients and start fighting these guys. And as you can see, it doesn't do super impressive damage, but it will start ripping off their armor pretty soon. There we are. Takes care of them in not an eternity, but definitely takes a long time, as you were seeing. I'm gonna go refresh my Defy, because these guys take forever to kill with this weapon. But as you can see, like, the damage we got is okay against enemies that just have base health, like that Corrupted Ancient, you know? It just had high base health, and we were doing just fine. Even, you know, that heavy gunner, like, went down okay. These guys will go down, you know, in a somewhat timely manner. It takes a few too many attacks for our tastes, but, you know, 4, that's not terrible, right? So, this is a very good benchmark to use compared to other weapons. You really see that Body Count and Blood Rush makes a huge difference, and it's very, very hard without them. If you have something like Lesion, which stacks a lot of bleeds and stuff, you can kill enemies like this a little bit effectively as well, but you really, really want that scaling damage. As you saw, the Prisma Dual Cleavers were absolutely shredding these enemies, and compared to that, even weapons with pretty advanced mechanics are hitting like a comparative wet noodle. So yeah, those are some benchmarks for melee. If there are other melee weapons you'd like to see, I'd be happy to do another video where I just go over some melee weapon builds at once and compare them to each other, talk about them in context of each other. I hope that gives you a good perspective on like the effect of different mods on your gameplay. I know that when I was first starting out, I was like, do I really need Blood Rush? Like, yeah, you do. You kind of do. If you want to use melee in endgame, and you don't want to use it as like CC, you know, you could use something like Jacket Tag, and then it's like, okay, this weapon is good with no mods because it just creates like massive friggin' explosions when you know, and knocks everything off. So sure, like if you want to do that, then you don't need it, but it's surprisingly, perhaps disappointingly necessary. But yeah, Maiming Strike is really strong. Relentless Combination is incredibly strong on Telos Boltace. I don't really know what else to say. I hope that was helpful. Tell me if it was or if it wasn't. I especially want feedback on this video. And I'm super excited for next week. I have a crazy Saren build that involves Telos Boltace, and I will see you next time.